We are honored to have you here to talk about lessons on product market fit with Andy Richman. We are a network of founders helping founders. So for those of you that are net new, we're going to start with just a brief overview of what Founders Network is all about, and then hand it over to my fellow partner in crime here, Barbara Buchanan, to introduce our keynote speaker for our chapter, Andy Richman. So with that, let's talk a little bit about what Founders Network is all about. So welcome all of you and thank you for being here. So really, Founders Network is around four things. We're all volunteers here, volunteering our time. This is around founders helping founders. So be completely authentic, share your experiences, share your connections with others, ask for help, because really we don't know the things we don't know. And that's part of why this network exists and why we're so thankful for Andy graciously donating his time to help us learn about the things that we don't know. So thank you for that. And inclusivity. I mean, ultimately, really these different perspectives help us to learn and grow. And peer mentorship is core to the DNA of Founders Network. So with that, in that vein of diversity and inclusion, these are two initiatives that Founders Network has supported, both the Black Founders Initiative and the Women's Leadership Initiative, ways for you to get engaged and involved. Definitely encourage you to go to foundersnetwork.com to find out more about these particular initiatives. We do recognize peers of the week. So Mitesh Shroff from the Silicon Valley chapter is definitely being recognized this week for reflecting these core values that we just mentioned. So he's a founder of Arintra, and he's actively participating in the Founders Network Forum. This is a great vehicle for you to actively engage, share the great things that are happening in your own startup, and ask for advice from others and offer help to others. So with that, there are new lifetime members. For those that are interested in joining Founders Network, lifetime membership opens up a myriad of different opportunities for you. So congratulations to all the new lifetime members. There are net new members. There's a lot of great curriculum. This is an example of the type of curriculum that Founders Network offers. So highly encourage you to join if you haven't. If you are a guest here, you can see how we interact with each other. And the best way to interact is to ask questions. So encourage you to use the chat, introduce yourself, say who you work for, and ask a question, because that's how we learn and grow. We want to make this an interactive conversation. So it is an invite-only group for full-time tech founders. So if you think you're a good fit, reach out to us. We're happy to have a conversation with you and then see if we can invite you to this particular group. So we do firmly believe in Founders Network of giving back to the community. So as a result, this is what Founders Network at a core does. So it's the 1% pledge. We have upcoming events. So these are great ways to engage with other chapters. There are chapters all around the world. So one event that's coming up in the near term that we are also supporting as the Founders Network DC chapter is Beta and Beers with Founders. So the DC chapter is partnering with the New York chapter, the Chicago chapter, and the London chapter to put on this event. So we'll be able to see great new technology and be able to provide feedback and learn from each other. So I encourage you to join that on November 3rd. And you can see there's demo day with the Los Angeles chapter, peer-to-peer on November 23rd. And then the next global keynote is November 17th. So being part of Founders Network means you get to take advantage of these deals. I know I personally, as a founder, have taken advantage of these deals. So encourage you to check out these deals. They will save your startup significant amount of money. So these are great opportunities as you grow and scale your business to leverage these deals. So featured deals are listed here. Again, highly encourage you to take advantage of it. There's a multitude here. I couldn't say enough about these ways in which you can grow and scale your startup. There's a link in the chat if you would like to see if you qualify for membership. Just click that link and follow it to learn more. So in the vein of chapter leaders, as mentioned, I serve as the chapter director of Founders Network, joined by two exceptional partners in crime here. Barbara Buchanan, the founder of MediaVax, serves as our growth chair, and Tony Ma serves as our membership chair. So the three of us comprise your leadership team serving the local DC metro area community. And today we are honored to have Andy Richman here from Product Savvy to talk to us about lessons on product market fit. And with that, I will hand it over to my colleague Barbara to introduce Andy.
Thank you, Anil. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here, Andy. I joined Founders Network in March of this year. It was probably just about the same time I met Andy Richman. Andy was introduced to me by one of my advisors and good friends, David Berkowitz, up in New York, who is just the serial marketer known by the marketing PR community far and wide. And he and Andy had been buddies for a long time. And actually, Andy and I, basically, it's Washington, D.C., so we're only like one connection away from pretty much everybody, right? Everybody knows everybody. So we quickly synced up, found out our Rolodexes were in line. And then Andy actually just set out to help me in many ways as a founder, just as if he was already a part of Founders Network, really providing introductions to investors, some advice, recruiting advice, some guidance. So we just became fast friends. We have yet to get together in person during COVID here, but we're going to share some drinks here and find out even more about what we have in common. So Andy has a long, rich history, first in the UK in healthcare systems, and then a healthcare company, which brought him to the United States. He'll tell you a little bit more about his background. But ultimately, he learned that product market fit was the key to success. He has started an accelerator. He has been founder of a few companies, some of those acquired. He's got a very keen experience, not just in healthcare, but in other markets as well, and really has fine-tuned this process of finding your product market fit. So we're really anxious to hear what he has to say. I will go ahead and turn it over to Andy to let him tell you a little bit more about how he got to that understanding and his background at a wide variety of companies. But we're really happy to have him in the DC community. He's really well known in this area. The venture capital community here calls on him and his company, Product Savvy, to help them with startups that have been funded that could not find a product market fit, new investments, old investments. He is well known in the local angel and VC community as someone to help fix problems that have occurred where perhaps startups have gotten off on the wrong track or ended up in the wrong direction with their market fit. So thanks, Andy. I'll turn it over and let you give us your wisdom.
Thank you, Barbara and Neil and Tony, for inviting me. It's certainly a pleasure. I didn't know there was a London chapter. I managed to get back to London in the last month or so for the first time in a couple of years, and I'm a very proud Londoner, so I'll have to find out who's in that chapter. So let me just go ahead and someone's going to need to give me permission to share my screen. Okay.
Paul, can you do that? Is Paul there?
Yeah.
There we go.
Should be good. Everyone can see that, and can you all hear me okay? So that's a good start. I was a bit nervous this morning because the power went out briefly last night with the wind and whatever, so I was praying that the internet at least stayed in place. So I gave this a subtitle or some thought. I'm not a sailor, but this is a sailing quote that I often think about when thinking about product market fit and the various challenges, which is, really understanding where you're going and where you want to be heading for. And running a startup is very much like sailing, because you're going to be tacking left and tacking right, and you are not going to be entirely sure that you're on the optimal route to your destination, which is okay. So you want to make sure you do catch the wind, but ultimately you do want to know for where you're headed. So that's really the metaphor that I was thinking about for today's talk. Just a bit more about me. As Barbara mentioned, I am based in Washington, D.C. I moved here in 2008. I was a co-founder of a group of companies, and around the time that health reform was on the agenda in the US, I moved over here because I'd been working with a number of people that Obama was going to look to try and drive innovation and improvement in US healthcare. So that's what initially brought me out with my young family, and we decided to stay. That company was actually acquired, when was that? 2011, 12, and been involved in a number of different things since that time. So I've been involved in founding companies in the UK, and one in Europe, and in the US, and one in Canada. Some in the data analytics space, some in the kind of pure technology space. But everything I've been involved with in one way or another has focused on product. It could be product strategy, could be product marketing, could be product management. So I'm always thinking about product. And since 2013, I've been working with my partner and the team at Product Savvy to really help startups. And this is startups both locally and nationally, and in fact globally, on all aspects of product. And in the Product Savvy column, you can see I call it 360 degrees of product. I mean, we get involved in all aspects. It could be from building the product to figuring out the product marketing strategy. And really there's two scenarios where we get involved. And Barbara, I think, alluded to this. One is when they raise their first institutional round, so it could be 1, 2, 3 million or so, and they're setting out on this journey to build the product. And they're aware, or their investors are aware, or collectively they're aware that they're going to be spending a lot of money on building the product, and they want to get it right. Otherwise, they're going to burn through the money fast, and they'll end up where they didn't want to be. They'll end up in Barcelona when they actually wanted to be going to Sardinia. So I'll pick some ports, and that's usually quite a fun time for me. Everyone's in there. There's money in the bank. The pressure's on, but everyone is understanding what they're needing to do. The second situation, which is actually where I spend much more of my time, and actually what I'm going to talk about more today, is more of a turnaround situation. So this is a situation where the hockey stick that they were showing investors doesn't look like a hockey stick. The product that they thought was going to wow the market didn't wow the market. And they're really struggling with what they can do to figure out this product market fit. And I always describe it as the kumbaya moment has come and gone. And now the pressure's on to figure it out. And the investors are typically smart people. They understand sunk cost, and they're only going to continue to fund the business for some period of time. And at Product Savvy, I work with a team of like-minded individuals. Some come more from the engineering side, some come more from the business side, like myself. But when we do get involved, we tend to get involved for a number of years, and we really become part of the management teams. Okay. Product market fit. So there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of great stuff out there. You can go online, you can read the textbooks, you can take a course. And today, we're not doing any of that stuff. I'm not saying there's not value in it. There's some great frameworks out there. You can read them, you can learn from them. There's definitely a lot of lessons. But today, I thought it would be more fun to talk about a real life story, and to pick one of the projects that we worked on and the various challenges that we had, and how we found our way to product market fit. And at the end of that, to draw some lessons from that story that I think are more generalizable, and ones that I have discovered on a number of different projects seem to be the same things coming up repeatedly. So we can talk about those. I'm going to try and get through this fairly quickly, but in telling the story, I want to give you enough detail that you understand the kind of scenario that we were facing, and that the leadership team were facing in the business. So I'm not going to name the company. I have spoken to the CEO and others involved. They're happy for us to use the case study as it is, but I'm not going to name any names. And but it's a good and interesting story, and I've just called this "Looking for Product Market Fit." Okay, so let's begin. So it's a little bit of a DC-centric story in some ways, but there's many parallels that I think you'll find elsewhere. So this particular startup was founded in 2012, and they actually were spun out from a technology services company. And specifically, they had been working on a project for a single client who had a need for a particular type of technology. And the more they got involved in working on this technology for this particular client, the more they had a feeling that this was something that would be likely experienced by other organizations, and would be something which, from a kind of, if you know the services business, you're basically working for a single company, and they thought there could be an opportunity for one-to-many products. So we can take this project and turn it into a product. And we think there'll be quite a lot of need for this out there in the market. And they did do some asking around, and they had a pretty good sense of it. And there was a very large client who had this need, and they learnt a lot in that initial piece. So they spun this out into a new company and got some initial investment for the idea, which was validated enough that they got some outside investment. They brought a CEO into the company, very strong CEO with a background in the tech world, so he understood the space. Very strong sales capability, understood marketing, and they had a very, very good team. This was not two 22-year-olds out of college trying to figure it out. This was an experienced team of operators who knew what they were doing and had come in to work on this. So I got introduced to them around just over 2 years after they had started. And the core technology had been built. They had this really strong sales-led organization in place. They had no paying customers. They had a lot of leads, I would say, but no paying customers. And if we're honest and sitting back now, it's easier to say this. At that time, there really was no clear path route to revenue for the company. And the expectation was, from when they'd spun this out, that they would be much, much further along than where they were. Okay, so the situation was one of frustration. You've got a big team. They're building product. They're doing marketing. They're doing sales. That frustration was not just at the leadership level. It was in the team, whether it was in engineering or sales or elsewhere. People were frustrated that this thing wasn't catching fire the way they thought it should be catching fire. And of course, the investors were also frustrated because this was probably seen as a relatively low risk thing because they'd already kind of validated. They thought that there was a need for the product. It was a spin out. It wasn't some new thing. You had an experienced team of operators. And if I was to kind of summarize where they were at as a company, I would go into a lot of meetings and they would come back to me and say, based on what we're hearing from potential customers, I now think if we just add this one additional new feature, I think we can get a sale. So I'd hear that once and say, okay, let's build that new feature and let's get the sale. And then we'd build that feature and they'd go out and show it. And then again, they would say, there's another new feature that they're now asking for. And it was this continuous loop of building more and more and more product. It was already a pretty big product. This was not a narrowly defined product. This was a big product that was going to sell for large amounts of money to big organizations. And yet, no matter what they built, it wasn't happening. But at the same time, in sitting in and listening to lots of these conversations with customers, or rather potential customers, none of them were paying, potential customers or people running proof of concepts, there was one recurring piece of what they'd built. If you listen really carefully, which when you talked about that one piece, you would see people's eyes open and you'd see a little spark. And if you listen really carefully, they would often say, and often it may not even be the person who's leading the call, but one of the other people who was on the call say, that is really cool. That bit there, that's awesome. And then we would gloss over that because that was some tiny little piece of this much bigger vision that was going to transform these organizations. But I heard it enough and others began to hear it enough and I amplified it that I think there's a golden, I use this metaphor of, panning for gold in this situation. Likely there is something in there. Likely that we are, there may just be gravel, but often there is gold. It just gets lost in the gravel. And we discovered what came to be a golden nugget in the pan when we were doing this. And it only came out through those conversations and listening very, very carefully. So that was in the first half of 2015. by the second half of 2015, we were really validating what we had heard and what we thought this little golden nugget might be. And we took that back to our existing leads and existing potential customers or people running proof of concepts, and we validated it with them and more people to say, is this something that you think, forget everything else we've told you in the past, is this piece of value? And in order to do that, what we did was we was very much a kind of fake it till we make it. We'd already spent a lot of money building stuff, so we didn't build a new version initially. We just did some what I call low fidelity mock-ups, something to visualize what we were thinking about and to do more validation on that and to give them a much better sense of this. And at the end of that phase, we felt we really have got something. And at that point, we had to go back to the leadership team and the investors and others and say, we have an idea to recast the business. 95% of what we've spent your money on building is not resonating in the market. But 5% of it, we think, may just be a little gold nugget based on the validation that we're hearing. Do you trust us to call it a pivot is an understatement. To really place a big bet on this, the future of the company on this piece, and essentially extract that 5% out and recast it in an entirely new way. And we got the support of the group. As I said, investors tend to understand sunk cost. They know what's gone is gone. And so we spent the next 4 months developing this MVP, this minimum viable product. Okay. Phase 4. We did that, and it was decided that actually we should spin this out as an entirely new company, not just a new product. Had a new name, a new brand, a very different message. Rather than it being a big platform to solve lots of problems, we purpose this as a simple, single-purpose product. Some might argue and say it's not, and many did. This is not a product, Andy or team. This is a feature. And yet, we had the sense that would be valuable enough that probably you could build a company around it, and then you could build on that feature and begin to layer up rather than going to market with something big. So we put this product out there, and unlike the original strategy, which was enterprise sales, selling the product to big customers, we put this out there on the internet, did some marketing around it, and within 2 weeks we'd secured our first customer. Now our hypothesis was that we're going to start with selling this product to small companies, probably startups, and then as we mature, maybe we can sell to medium-sized companies, and eventually maybe we can go for these big enterprises. What we hadn't anticipated was that all of the first customers who signed up for the product were very large enterprises. But it wasn't the CIO or CTO or senior management, it was the actual users, the actual engineers in this case, that were looking for a tool to solve a very specific problem. They were doing their homework, going out there looking for what could solve it, and they would find this product. And many more followed and continued to follow over the years. I describe this as pull, not push. We had spent 2 years pushing, something had changed, and suddenly we were pulling them in. It was inbound, not outbound. And over the period 2015 to 2019, several hundred customers joined them, and many thousands of users ended up using the product, and we ended up growing it. The company, this one has somewhat of a happy ending. Many don't, so I don't want to. It actually was acquired in 2019 by a large tech company who saw the value of their large customer base and really saw the value in how much the customers loved the product. And then that large company, that large private tech company, was actually acquired by a large, it was acquired by a large public company in 2021. and is continuing to be worked on and integrating. But if there was one kind of afterthought with all of this, I say it's 95% plus of all the customers. In reality, it might be as high as 98 and 99% of all the customers that we've ever acquired continue to be customers of the company and love the product. And it's been one of those products that really has consistently been voted in all these independent software tests, as being, a product that users love. And yes, a very interesting story and somewhat of a happy ending in this particular case. But what are the lessons that I took away from this and I see as being more generalizable elsewhere? So the first one is this concept of incrementing versus iterating. And people think often this is the same thing. It's not. It's very, very different. My sense was, in coming into this organization, that they had a vision of what this end product would look like that wasn't exactly fully baked, but was pretty fully baked right at the beginning. And then what they did was they set their engineering team about building it, and they continued to build it pretty much until it was done, and then they took it out to the market. And at that point they realized that it still wasn't the Mona Lisa and it actually needed more and more and more work. We can contrast that to the idea of iterating, which is something quite different, which is much more vague, which in some ways investors don't want you to go to them with a vague idea. They want you to go and feel confident and say, I'm painting the Mona Lisa, this is what it is. In reality, that's, in my experience, somewhat naive. And what you'd be much better doing is having this much broader sense of what you want to be building, and then this iterative approach of going out and gradually layering on layer upon layer upon layer until you end up with the finished product. And in fact, in many cases, you never really get to the final Mona Lisa because this is going on for years and years and years. I think it helps reduce risk, and I think ultimately it builds much, much, much better products. So that's one set of lessons from this particular story, but also more general ones. The other one is this concept of validated learning, which is very simple, but much harder to do, which is building something, measuring it, and then learning from that, and then going through this in a very, very fast cycle. Build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn, build, measure, learn. We meet a lot of people. I meet a lot of people who have spent a lot of time building, not enough time measuring, and often no time learning. They've been very confident in what they're building, too confident. And it doesn't matter whether it's people on the business side who are the founders, or people who are on the engineering side, or the technology side. It happens to both. It could be a doctor who has an idea of how they can improve patient care, and they have a very clear vision, and they just hire a team to build it. It could be an engineer who's very confident that there's a need in the market for some piece of technology that they know very well, and they just go ahead and build it. So this idea of validated learning is absolutely critical. This next one is huge. So you may have seen I get to work with Carnegie Mellon as an adjunct, and at one point we had the team from Google X come down and give a talk to the students, and we were told not to take any photos, but being a bad faculty member, I did actually sneak a photo of this one. So I don't know if you recognise him. This is actually Larry, and the team had been in the lab working on a new product idea in the morning, and they wanted to show it to him in the afternoon. So rather than going with a PowerPoint or some kind of written document, they wanted to create an actual prototype so that Larry could understand. And they got this little projector that they hacked together, and a coat hanger that they put around his neck, and this little thing that they made out of a coat hanger up here with a piece of opaque plastic, and this little netbook which projected something onto this so that he could have this concept of information coming into his vision. And you probably can guess the product, and we can argue whether it was a good product or not, But Larry got the concept immediately in a way that trying to explain it in words never would have happened. And again, in my experience, putting products in front of customers or concepts or wireframes earlier and getting the feedback is absolutely essential. So yeah, we can argue whether it's a great product or not. But that idea of giving users something to look at. Next lesson, and we're getting towards the end, and then we're going to leave the rest of the time for questions, is I see a lot of focus on features. And in some ways that's driven by the market. Customers are saying, we need this, we need this, we need this. What I see much less focus on is people really understanding the benefits of that. So when someone asks for a feature, are you pushing back and saying, explain to me what the benefits of that will be to your organization? And I didn't see that happening. I don't see that happening in a lot of the companies we work for. So they have a feature request, they build it. They have a feature request, they build it. They never really tease out what the benefits are. But ultimately, you need to go further than just understanding the benefits. What you really need to understand, and I think this is, at least for the company I was describing, what we figured out very quickly, is what the product is worth in a very specific customer application. So understanding how this is going to deliver value for the specific purpose to which that organization is going to be using it. And it could be very different in different organizations. So really going inside. I mean, I know Barbara's sitting here, so picking on Barbara's company, going inside the end customer's organization and sitting with the people who are going to be using the product and really understanding the value of it and being able to kind of really articulate and capture that and validate that value is really happening there in the customer's environment. Okay, so a few questions and then we can open it up. The first one is, if you're founders, I'm sure you're all somewhere on this journey, because the journey never really ends to finding product market fit. Any lessons that maybe you've learned about your product and what you didn't know when you entered into it? Because usually it's only once you start on that voyage do you really learn about your product. And the third question is whether you think you found the golden nugget that exists within your product, that one piece or pieces that really electrify the people that you're explaining it to. But before we go on to those, there's just one final thing. And this is the thing of really, you can have the best strategies and plans in the world. You could all be, Harvard MBAs with a focus on product marketing, but it's only once you get out there and you start getting pounded on repeatedly on the nose, are you really going to be able to figure this out? So I would love to hear your challenges, your stories and your thoughts. And at that point, I will open it up for discussion.
Wow. Thanks, Andy. That was really, I really want to know who that company is now that you've told us the story. So what will that take? No, that's a great starting point for some discussion. And actually there's a question in here. Kevin, do you want to ask the question you've put in here? Really, and I think it's to the question of investors and the order in which it's really that investor pitch usually has sort of traction, product market fit by, fourth or fifth slide. And I think that's a good place to start. The issue of investors wanting to see your Mona Lisa and what your concept is for your Mona Lisa versus you want to actually discover that and discover the value first before you've actually painted that picture in and filled the picture in. So what do you think about this investor perspective? Maybe we can start there, Andy, or Kevin, you can certainly.
Yeah, well, I just articulate it real quick, Barbara. Good presentation, Andy, by the way. This is really good information. I think it's, this is an important part to focus on for most of us as founders. So I've been pitching a lot, and you got the Guy Kawasaki type thing. You go through you say, this is the market size, this is the problem, this is the solution, those kind of standard things. And I see, the investors, their eyes start rolling over. They see this like a million times over. And I want to be different, quite frankly. So I've been thinking about starting my presentation with our Salesforce dashboard, just show that some of the numbers, like our forecast numbers. Like you see the charts, we're tracking them, and then go right to the product market fit. Say, we have closed, well, our hypothesis was in the retail market, and we've closed Big O Tires and Jiffy Lubes, and just state that up front. But is it too drastically different and too unorthodox to really start with the product market fit and then fill in the blanks of the team and the problem and the solution? So I'm just thinking about the order.
It's clearly a very pointed question, and it really depends on the audience to which you're pitching.
Yeah,
I think that the more mature, experienced investors, be it at the angel level or larger institutional investors, will understand that this is a journey. And one of the most effective things I see that they do is call up your customers and ask why they see value in your product. I have a good friend, who raised 250 million for his company. The last round was on a 1 billion valuation. And what's fascinating is he said all the way up, and the company ended up going to zero, just to give you some context on that. He said all the way up, no matter what level the investors were, and they went right up to Goldman Sachs and really tier one San Francisco VCs, nobody really asked the right question, which was the product question. In fact, I'll tell you what the company did. So they were an e-cigarette company. They were the largest e-cigarette company in the world when they did the fundraise. They saw this thing on the side, vaping, and they said, who on earth is going to want to vape? All of them. Groupthink. It's never going to catch on. People want to smoke things that look like cigarettes. The form factor was a cigarette. And everyone discounted this idea of vapes and vape shops and this whole thing. Meanwhile, this company went to zero, and Juul and these other guys went to whatever Juul ended up going to. It's an awful business. I would want nothing to do with it myself. But anyway, it is about asking the right questions, and it is about, at least for the investors, in really you educating them so that they know what questions to ask, and then go validate you really have got that product. And I'll tell you the company we had here. They could have called anyone, and to this day they can call any one of the customers who use the product, and they will explain very quickly what the value is they get, and they can actually put that value into dollars and cents that they get from the product.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that, Andy. Yeah, the target audience is, I was thinking like the 3 to 5 minute pitches where you just got to get attention amongst the group. If you can have an extended conversation, but you got to get to second base before you can have those. Well, I mean,
about the story. Yeah, ultimately, of course, you're going to have to capture your attention. It's about the story. Yeah. And yes, sure, you're going to have to present a confident story, but ultimately you need to educate them to know the questions that they need to ask to be able to validate what you're doing.
Excellent.
Don't assume that they actually understand what the right questions to ask.
Yeah. So. All right, thank you,
Kevin. I feel like also just test it. Test your idea and see if people respond. If they do, great. You might end up tweaking it 3 or 4 times. I don't think that's black and white.
I kind of did, David. So, I have pitched, for the last couple of weeks, and I just changed it up because I wanted some kind of reaction. That's all I was looking for, And
my guess is it's going to be more interesting for you if you switch it up. And so your enthusiasm might come through. And so what might make the difference isn't your order. It's probably more your persona.
Yeah. We're excited about our current deals. So it's easy to talk about those things.
Cool. Yeah. Congrats.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Other questions? I'm sure there's going to be folks struggling with this issue right now. I know I am. Thank you, Andy. I met Andy when I had just built the first product that we thought we understood the needs, and it turns out they wanted something much bigger and different in terms of the value they wanted. We're in the disinformation business. We were able to give them a small piece of an answer. They really wanted the big picture, so we were out building the big picture of what's going on in disinformation instead of looking at a small slice. It's a harder technical problem, but the message was pretty loud and clear from the customers. But it was a conversation with Andy that helped refocus me. So I'm sure you guys have similar experiences.
Hey, Andy, it's Tony. Real quick, I agree with you. Good seeing you again, by the way.
Yeah, great seeing you.
Not focusing on features and stuff like that. But, one of the things I guess recently we've been looking at is this framework called Jobs to be Done, or ODI framework, for getting to, so that you're not, you're focusing on the outcomes, the big picture, and what the customer. What are your thoughts about leveraging some sort of framework like that to kind of build your roadmap to get the product market fit, as well as painting the vision of the product? Any thoughts there?
To be honest, I don't. To be honest, Tony, I don't know the specific framework. I haven't looked at it. So what's the core focus of it? Can you just explain it in a nutshell?
The core focus is looking at the outcomes as opposed to the features, and then always testing, building the MVP wireframes, and going from there and validating that before you build that, and then testing it and always measuring. So there's that component of that loop that you talk about: plan, measure, rinse and repeat. So there seems to be commonality there, and I know that's companies like Intercom and a couple others have started to use this Jobs to be Done framework. I think it's based on Clayton Christensen, as well as some others in the field. So just wanted to get your perspective there.
Yeah, I'll look into it. I can't specifically comment on that though at this point. So, but thanks for raising it.
Can I ask a question?
Hi, great to meet you.
Hello. Oh. Can you hear me?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Oh, hi. Yeah.
Hi.
I've been struggling in this product market fit. I'm in 3D virtual fashion. They call it digital fashion now. It used to be something else before. So themes have changed, it has moved on into the metaverse virtual fashion. And I feel I'm stuck in I feel that product market fit is something that requires money. Advertising, PR, as a startup that we are, even though we are technologists, I find that how would you get a product market fit when you don't have a lot of money to advertise, to get all the press behind you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a great fan of Seth Godin and his minimum viable audience concept. For me, that always works. So not just the concept of a minimum viable audience, but go find 5 people, and let's start close to home. Let's not start, at some large tech company. Let's find 5 people in the industry who that you can get to be passionate about your digital fashion company. And if you can't find 5 people that you can convince to introduce you to another 5 people, then you probably haven't got the basics of product market fit. So start really small. I fundamentally disagree. This is about budgets and marketing and anything else. This is about you finding people who see your vision and share it and want to then share it with others. Many great companies started with just 5. So
I have been among the people who are passionate about what we do. It's mainly other tech founder, who understood the technology, so it's hard for me because I'm trying to sell this to fashion people. They haven't got there, but I've been getting traction with NFT people. The minute I show our technology, NFT people immediately jump, can you do this? And I felt that it was a little bit distracting because, they wanted to use it for something else. So that's where I'm stuck, where, I don't get funding because there's no product market fit, because I don't have what they call customer acquisition channel, right? So, I'm difficult to find, like you said, 5 people that is your customer, that you thought you were a customer.
Yeah, I mean, normally the way I see it working is first, do you work alone or do you have a founder?
I do have a couple
You have a
co-founders.
co-founder. So the
Mhm.
first, so that's a good thing. The first thing is you have to convince someone else that you're not completely crazy and that your idea is robust. So that's a good first stage. Having found a fellow crazy person to come into the company with you, you now need to go find 5 other people who likewise see your vision, share your vision. And if you can't convince those 5 people that you have something, don't spend any money until you have figured out what it's going to take to get those 5 people to believe in you. Because what I've realized very quickly, once you get the product market fit, is people tell their friends very, very fast. It's a very networked world. You know, I think almost every app that I've downloaded in the last few years onto my phone, someone has told me, Andy, you need to download it, it's great. Or Dad, you need to download it, it's great. It wasn't some piece of advertising or some article I read. Someone told me I need to get this thing and check it out. And that's the way technology spreads. So I would suggest that's where you start. Find 5 people who see your vision and are passionate about it and want to help by introducing you to another 5 people.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, great to meet
Sure.
you.
So, my name is Ali, and I'm working on an augmented reality-based app that we're trying to build over the past 2 years. And I wanted to talk about how to find the product market fit when it comes to industries that are not touched that much. Like you're hearing people talk about the metaverse nowadays, but I kind of read about it like a couple of days ago, but I didn't know much about it. I have been working on my idea for a while, for the past 2 years. And as I read it, I sensed that my idea is kind of, an upgraded version of the metaverse. So that's how I am understanding my product at the moment. But I would like to ask you that what do you think are going to be the challenges to finding the product market fit in such an industry which is so new that there is not a single product yet in the market that has been in use? And so where do I collect the feedback? How do I kind of sort it out? Because if I had a traditional app or a traditional software business, I would have a lot of resources to play with, and I would have a lot of things that I could revolve my mind around. But here, I feel like it's lacking a little bit.
No, I understand the question. And it's not uncommon when you're early into a new technology sector where this business is not about solving an existing problem. So it's not that you're going to go exactly.
Yeah,
So
there
you're
are
not
no
going out
problems to be solved now. We don't see any problems.
So
Yes.
and
So it's even more difficult if you know that you're solving a problem, then you have a clear framework to follow. But when there are no problems, so like how do you navigate through that path? And you tell me that it's gonna go on forever, like 5 years, 10 years, 12 years. So how do I what do I need to be working on, particularly if you have anything in your mind?
yeah, it's definitely challenging. I mean, you need to put yourself into the world, or rather into the community of people who are developing these new ideas. So first thing is you need to surround yourself with people who are operating in that world, just like the early people in crypto who I met, back in 2012, 2013. I would show up and think, I have no idea what these people are talking about, but it's pretty cool. And they're smart people. I think I should probably learn something about this. And then, whatever it is, 8 years later, we have Bitcoin now. They're trying to explain to me in 2012, 2013, a $1 trillion valuation. So I totally get it. But it is challenging. One of the things I failed at was I got involved in a technology company in Canada where the founder was a pretty brilliant engineer who had developed a technology like this and was looking for product market fit, and he hadn't found it, and I came on board to try and help him find it, and we ended up going everywhere from Madison Avenue ad agencies, which is where I met David, who introduced me to Barbara, to movie studios. I sat on the movie lot at Warner Brothers in Hollywood, pitching Sony Entertainment. I met with just about every interesting person that we could possibly find to validate this technology and to see it. And at the end of the 2 years, we could not find product market fit. It was just too far ahead and it was just too out there. But we literally surrounded ourselves with the very best and very smartest people in this particular segment that we're looking at. And we just couldn't get there. Now, today, do I see products doing something very similar? Yes, we were way early. But that's the way we tried to do it. And the other thing I'd say is we brought immediately someone in as the chairman of the company who really did understand what we were trying to do and saw the truly disruptive nature of the platform. But even he couldn't help us ultimately get there. He got us all the meetings we needed with everyone we could possibly meet, and we just couldn't get it over the line. And we ended up essentially licensing the company for a fraction of its value to another company. So it is hard.
You said that in your answer that you were just giving now, you said that that you couldn't reach product market fit. Like how did you know that at that time? Like what makes you think that, okay, now it's done, we're not gonna get there?
We looked each other in the eyes. Me as the business guy,
it has to be something that
having sunk 2 years of our lives. Well, he'd spent more. I spent 2 years. He'd spent the previous 18 months working on it, and we just couldn't get there. The happy ending to the story was that he moved on. The next company he founded did the largest Series A in Canadian history, and he went on to do exceptionally well in a product that was almost a complete opposite of this. It wasn't wildly innovative. It wasn't wildly creative. It just had massive product market fit, and it took off immediately, and they raised huge amounts of money. And anyway, so yeah, I mean, you never know what your next project would have, but we just looked each other in the eyes and just felt we're not going to get there. Yeah, we could spend the next 2 years. We just couldn't see ends in sight, and to my mind, at least, I felt I'd exhausted every channel we could possibly find to try and find usage for this particular technology.
All right.
So I think, yeah, great. I think, let's see, James, did you have a question? I know there were a couple other questions before we ran out of time.
I do. First, Andy, thanks for talking to us today. I really appreciate how concise you are with the presentation and the way you're answering these questions. So good job. So I'm in the med tech world, and it's crowded obviously right now, but it's crowded with a lot of the same. So what we've tried to do is not be the same as anything, which of course everybody's trying to do. But our challenge with product market fit is that our product / service is based on medical practices that go back about 100 years and are well researched, proven by major research facilities and that sort of thing, but mostly unknown to the general public. So our challenge is to get people to understand what we're talking about in the first place. How can you have a holistic medical approach when everybody's used to going to their doctor and having a completely crappy experience? What are your thoughts on how do you introduce something that's old to make it new?
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about the various companies I've worked with, and I've spent a lot of time in healthcare, so I understand definitely some of the challenges. Is content is where I would begin. I think that you need to produce content to educate your potential market on this particular technology or service that you're offering. And that content, if you find good content writers, should be both engaging and also, optimized for what people are searching for. One of the things with a lot of the companies we work for and who want to create this pull rather than the push is they're very, very content driven. So as well as developing their product, they have their marketing website and they produce large volumes of content, but that content is specifically written and purposed to capture the audience they're going after. So they understand what the current marketplace is searching for. So when people go to Google and they're looking for issues related to the area that you're working in, what search terms are they using? What's coming up when they enter those search terms? What sources are they going to? A lot of the marketing budget of the companies I work with that are nearly all, they tend not to be consumer, but I think you can read it across for consumer, is on content today. Good, high quality content. I'm not talking about outsourcing it to people who don't know what they're doing, but good content, which usually means that you need to write it or a member of the leadership team need to, but this isn't something you can hire someone on Upwork and just get them writing your content. You're going to have to do it yourself, and you're going to have to explain it clearly, and you may want to get an editor to help you. But
Now, our director of research is a behavioral psychologist and a PhD, and we've got 2 other PhD scientific writers on board. So they've got the skill. I don't have the money.
If you look at companies like Headspace or anyone in that kind of mental health space, and you look at how much content they've produced, Calm, Headspace, all those companies, they've done an incredible job in inbound marketing.
Interesting. One more quick question. I know Jeannie has a question, and then we'll conclude if we have time for one more.
Great, thanks, Barbara. Hi, Andy. Thanks for the presentation. How are you?
Great, good to meet you.
So I am in the process of developing a digital coaching mobile app solution targeting female professionals, and I'm close to launching a beta. I've got over 100 interested customers. And so here's my question as I'm thinking about the beta and product market fit. So certainly I want to test the natural usage and whether or not people are going to find the solution valuable and if it's sticky. So think of it something like Noom, which is for weight loss, but my thing is Empower for professional development. So it's similar type of engagement in terms of like every day you spend 10 minutes doing daily practice. So I would love any suggestions you have as to what I should be thinking about as I am designing my learning objectives, if you will, for my beta, besides just saying, hey, do you find this valuable? Are there certain things that I should be designing in advance to make sure that I'm soliciting the right type of feedback as it relates to product market fit?
I mean, on a product like that, I mean, being a data analytics guy, the first thing I would be thinking about is, what are the KPIs that you need to be measuring in terms of engagement and usage? And I would make sure that as much effort as you're putting into designing a beautiful front end, that you're thinking about what you need as a back end in terms of usage analytics. And this needs to be very, very highly data driven. All those companies, Noom included, they're all, I mean, their data analytics capability is pretty amazing, and they've got the growth based upon understanding the usage analytics. The only other thing is back to the Seth Godin thing, minimum viable audience. For a product like this, unless you can find people who love it enough to find you more people, you haven't probably got that, that you haven't quite got it right yet. So if you've got 100, that's great. At the point where that 100 find you your second 100, you're going. If that 100 isn't telling all their friends they have to download this,
Yeah.
all their friends who fit your target demographic,
Mhm.
you're not there, and that's the way apps are spreading today. You have to get your existing users to help you onboard your next set of users.
Yes, I agree. So I do have my developers building Mixpanel for analytics, so I can analyze all those KPIs as you mentioned. The question is, so I've seen on a lot of sites are like, hey, just try my product and give me feedback, right? That seems very open-ended. Versus I'm wondering if there are specific type of questions I should be prompting to make sure I'm also marrying the qualitative with the quantitative, besides just saying, hey, what features do you like, or what's missing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really good sites like BetaBound and other ones like that. I get asked by those guys quite often to look at things. I'll tell you the truth, the most effective research of the type you're describing that I'm involved with. So I do work for Amazon. They have me as part of a panel where they will call me and say, Andy, we want to show you this new set of features. And they will have a room full of people and they'll say, okay, Andy, can you please go and do X? Can you do Y? Can you do Z? Can you explain why when you wake up in the morning you do A, B, or C? And I literally have a whole table full of people who are just doing this user research. The questions they ask are really on the money, and every time I'm using their application that they wanted me to look at, they want me to narrate my thinking as I'm using it. So please explain, Andy, can you go ahead and create a new appointment to do X, Y, or Z, whatever? And as you're doing it, can you explain to us your thinking in the process of what you're going through? Doing that with even a small number of users is incredible.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate that guidance. Okay, that makes sense.
No, I'm just aware of the time.
Yeah, I think you guys can all reach out to Andy, find him on LinkedIn, and I'm sure he'll be happy to respond.
I'll put my email in the chat if people want. Actually, I can, I'll put it in the chat. If anyone wants to reach me, please just reach out.
Message on LinkedIn. Thanks, guys, for all of your attention. We have, as I said, the DC chapter has Beta and Brews with jointly with other chapters coming up November 3rd, and we look forward to seeing you all at the next global event as well. So, thank you for your time, Andy.
Thanks
to
Barbara.
everybody.
Thank you, Anil
Thanks
and
for your
Tony
questions.
for inviting me, and thanks for all the great questions.
Thank you.
Please feel free to reach out to me either via LinkedIn or via email. It would be great to connect with you all.
Thank you. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you for